Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Community of Learning call for March. We're really happy to have you all with us this morning. It looks like we have a large number of people on the call already, which is great. And thank you all for being so attentive when you joined to mute your line. We are recording today so that we can share this recording link for folks that maybe weren't able to join or folks that want to be able to go back to it at a later date. So if you could keep your line muted when you aren't talking, that would be much appreciated. So before we kind of kick off our time together this morning, we wanted to share a couple of tips and tricks for you in using our new software. Thanks to everybody who was able to test Skype for Business before our call today. We really appreciate it. We hope this will be a better platform for our virtual meetings together. We know that WebEx has had so many challenges in the past, so we're giving this a whirl today and we'll see how it works. And if it works great, then awesome. And if we need to kind of keep trying, then we're willing to keep trying. But we thought that this would be a good sort of next step in trying to get us to a better spot for these virtual meetings that we have with one another. So today we want to hear from you. I know I just asked you to make sure that your line is muted when you aren't talking, and I would like you to do that, but there's going to be lots of time for engagement, so I invite you at those points in time to unmute your lines and or use the chat box, which I will get to in just a moment. I will actually kind of explain to you where it should be on your screen so you know where to find it, and you can engage in conversation as needed. The second reminder, again, is just about muting your microphone or phone when you're not sharing, which we just went over. In case you're not sure where that is, if you look to the bottom of your screen, there are four little bubbles in the middle with icons on them. The second one in has a microphone, and all you have to do is click on that to mute, and it'll put a line through your microphone when you're muted. It will tell you you're muted, and if you click on it again, it will unmute you. So it's pretty simple. In terms of the chat box or to engage in conversation, if you look over to the far left of your screen, there's a little icon that has a comment bubble in it. If you click on that, it will show you the chat box. You'll be able to see what's going on in the chat box. Please note that when you are chatting, you're chatting to the whole group. I don't believe that there is an option to chat to individuals in this particular software. So just keep that in mind, but we really do want you to engage in conversation. So if it's easy for you to chat in through the chat box, we're going to test out using that here in just a little bit for roll call. Then feel free to use that throughout our time together. And lastly, as I said, we are recording. So if you could just make sure that you keep yourself muted when you aren't sharing or engaging in the conversations that we have going, that would be much appreciated so we can minimize background noise as much as possible in order to have a really clear webinar for those to listen to who are coming back to the webinar at a later date. Okay, before we get into our official welcome and introductions and roll call, I wanted to give you a glimpse of where we're headed for the day. So as you saw in the message that we sent along, I sent to all of you, this is Robin, by the way. I just realized that I didn't even say who I was when we got started this morning, so sorry about that, but I know lots of you know my voice. Our objective for today is to provide a virtual mechanism for peer-to-peer sharing and learning to enhance the Michigan Home Visiting Initiative improvement efforts. So that's what we are going to work toward today through our time together and through all of our time together on these community of learning calls. These are really a place for you to engage with one another, do that networking and good sharing around all the improvement work that you are doing within your program, and engaged in with other programs because many of you are participating in the Quality Improvement Learning Collaboratives as well. We will kick off things with welcome roll call and expectations, and then we're going to head right into peer-to-peer sharing this morning. And we sent out some information about that ahead of time, so you had some questions to ponder and think about, and we are going to ask everybody to engage in the peer-to-peer sharing. So I hope that you're ready to share a couple of neat things that you're engaged in together. From there, we'll move into MPHI QI Advisors Corner, and we're going to talk a little bit today about using data for improvement. And lastly, before we close out for the day, we have a couple of reminders, and we'll have space for any final questions. But as always, feel free to ask your questions throughout. You don't have to wait until the end when we have that time and space for final questions. All right, without further ado, I think we'll dive right into our official welcome and introductions and LAA team roll call. So here's how this is going to work. In the room here today, I have several people with me. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. And when we introduce ourselves, we're also going to do the roll call for the teams that we provide support to. Oh, goodness. I just saw a message from Oakland NFP that you can't hear anything. Can somebody else on the line confirm that you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, it looks like lots of people can hear me. Great. Thanks so much for responding. I'm going to Brittany, do you mind messaging Oakland and let, oh, Brenda is Angie is, sorry. We're going to message Oakland and see if maybe we can help you out. I'm wondering if, and Carrie just mentioned this too, if maybe your speakers are muted. No, that's Oakland. So Oakland NFP, we're working with you, and hopefully we can get your sound working a little bit better. I'm guessing it's maybe just a quick button on your computer, but keep chatting with us and let us know. Okay. So we're going to do a quick roll call or welcome introductions and let you know who's in the room. And while we're doing that, we're also going to see who's on the line. So I am going to check in and see the teams that I work directly back and forth with if you're on the line. And what we'll ask is, instead of unmuting and introducing your whole team, you can actually just go ahead and chat in the chat box and let us know that you're here. So if multiple folks from your team are on, that is awesome. You can feel free to just have one person chat in if you're not all in the same room together, or if you're all in the same room together, you can chat in together. But just let us know who's here, and we will hear from you all in a little bit when we get to the sharing piece. So without further ado, we'll kind of kick this off. And thanks again to you all for engaging in the chat box quickly, trying to help us with this challenge of figuring out speakers and making sure everybody can hear what's going on. As I said before, this is Robin Vandermoor. I am with Michigan Public Health Institute, as is everybody in the room with me today, and we are delighted to be at our March call. I am going to check in with the teams that I provide coaching to see if you are on the line, and I see that lots of people are chatting in. Thank you so much for doing that. We actually are going to roll call, so if you haven't chatted in yet, if you could let us know if you're here through the chat when we roll call your team, that would be fantastic. I'm going to check in with the teams that I work with. I work with Ingham Early Head Start, Genesee Early Head Start, Saginaw Early Head Start, and I know I saw Saginaw chat in a little bit ago. Oakland Early Head Start, Genesee Parents as Teachers, Delta Schoolcraft Parents as Teachers, Eastern Upper Peninsula Parents as Teachers, and Wexford Misaki Parents as Teachers. So if any of you are on the line and you haven't chatted in letting us know that you're here yet, if you could go ahead and do so, that would be great. And I am going to pass things off to Angela.
Good morning, everyone. This is Angela Precht. Here at MPHI, I provide targeted support to all of our NFP teams in the state in terms of their QI work. I see that we have our Berrien friends, our Detroit, Hurley, Kalamazoo, Oakland, and Saginaw friends.
But I can't hear. Hello, okay. This is Oakland.
Hi, Michelle.
Can you hear me? We can't hear anything.
Okay, you still can't hear anything. Michelle, can you get chats on the side of your box? Are you seeing the chat box on the side of your screen? we're going to move forward and we'll work one-on-one with our Oakland NFP teams so that we can make sure that they hear. There are 3 teams that I haven't seen sign in yet. Actually, now we just have 2. Our Kalamazoo NFP friends, Michelle and company, are you with us? Let's check in with our Ingham NFP friends. Celeste and company, are you there? Great. I see that you've signed in, and then we have our Kent NFP friends as well. So it looks like all of our NFP teams are in queue on the webinar. Thanks, everyone. I will pass along the mic to my colleague, Brenda.
Good morning, everyone. This is Brenda Dietrich. I coach the MDHHS HFA teams and some of the 32P sub 4 teams as well. So I'm going to go through the HFA teams from MDHHS first. I saw earlier that Wayne, Monica, and Nicole chimed in, Kent, Elise chimed in, and Muskegon, Heather chimed in. So I'm just going to check in that Kalamazoo HFA, Denise or Jody, or the team, are you here? Healthy Families Upper Peninsula, Kim or Carrie or anyone else from that team, if you can pop into the chat box and confirm that you're here. Oh, I see that you're here, Carrie. Good morning. Healthy Families Northern Michigan, Ashley, Tricia, or all of your friends. Saginaw, Heather, Julie, if you're on, if you could pop into the chat box and just let us know. And that concludes the MDHHS HFA teams. The 32P sub 4 teams who are in the Early Learning and Literacy Learning Collaborative, Kent Bright Beginnings, Karen's team. I think I saw Karen a little bit earlier on the chat. Washtenaw SOS PAT, Raina, if you are on, please chime into the chat box. And St. Clair PAT, Becky, if you're on, just chime into the chat box. Hi, Karen. Hi, Becky.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lauren Lapine. I am one of the advisors supporting the Michigan Department of Education 32P sub 4 local implementing agency work. I have a couple of teams that I think a few of you have already chimed in, but if you have not, please enter your team name into the chat box. You probably caught on to this by now. Calhoun PAT, Kent EHS, Kent Baby Scholars, Oakland PAT, and Saginaw PAT.
Oh, can I interrupt 1 second? This is Michelle from Oakland. I just wanted you to know I called in and we can hear you now.
Yay.
Great. We're so happy to hear that, Michelle.
We're on from Calhoun too, but we can't find the chat box.
We're glad that you're here. Thank you for joining, Calhoun team.
So if you look in all the way on the left-hand side, down in the very lower left-hand corner, you'll see a little icon that looks like a comment bubble. If you click on that, then your chat box should pop up for you.
I'm good now. I mean, you're on the phone. Yeah, I don't know if the screen, I can still see the screen. Well, I think I, oh shoot. That was
So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jeanette Ball, and I also work with the 32P team.
I mean, I can still see the slides.
Yeah.
They have changed.
So for my teams, the roll call,
if
Aranac PAT is on the line, go ahead and put that in the chat box. Livingston HFA, and then Ottawa PAT.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is Brittany Spitzley. My teams are, we have Ingham PAT, which I think I already saw on the line, and then Muskegon Early Head Start. If you're here, you can let us know.
And last but not least, you see her picture up there, but Grace is not able to be with us today, but I know that she's providing support to a few of the teams that are on the line. So if you haven't had a chance to chat in, if Van Buren PAT is on the call, as well as Washtenaw Early Head Start, if you could chat in and let us know, that would be great. All right, thanks everyone, and hopefully everybody's found their chat box by now, and once you actually click on it, it does leave the chat piece up on the side of your screen, so you should be able to see that on an ongoing basis during our time together here this morning. Thanks everybody for working through this with us and testing out this new technology. And thanks Lisa for letting us know that Van Buren is here. All righty, we're going to dive into our norms and agreements for our community of learning, and then really get into peer-to-peer sharing, which is the exciting part of our time together where you all get to engage with one another and talk about the neat things that you're doing in your programs and with the families that you are providing services to. So we are here to create a shared safe space for learning from and with one another, and our asks and what we're going to hold each other accountable to during our time together is to respect different perspectives and approaches, that we're all present, that we all engage in sharing and conversation throughout our time together, that we ask questions to seek deeper understanding. Remember, you don't have to reinvent the wheel with your work that you're engaged in. And if somebody else is doing something that piques your interest or is falling in an area where your team is working on improvement as well, ask questions, share resources with one another. Don't hesitate to engage in that way during our time together. And most of all, have fun. We don't get to do this very often. We really try hard to create some opportunities for you all to interact with one another, because we hear from you in evaluations from meetings and other times where we're able to get feedback from you how important and how helpful it is. So we really have this space for all of you to engage and learn with one another, and opportunity for us to also provide you with a tiny bit of additional information and training as we go along over the course of the year. But really, our big goal is to have this shared space that we can all engage in learning with one another. All righty, so we have gotten to our peer-to-peer sharing for the morning, and we are going to have lots of peer-to-peer sharing going on here this morning. And what we've done is we've kind of broken it down into the different sort of, I'm going to say, for lack of better terms, buckets of work that you all are engaged in, so that we can have some organization to peer-to-peer sharing. But we really do want you all to engage throughout. So again, I am going to ask all teams to share as we go today. And we look forward to hearing about all of the neat things that are going on within your improvement efforts. And this is also a good opportunity to even share some challenges that you're encountering and see if folks on the line have had some similar challenges. It might be able to provide you with some good ideas for moving forward. So we're going to kick things off with our QI Learning Collaborative work. And here you can see on the screen the different teams that are engaged. I'm going to just briefly go over the learning collaboratives before we dive into the peer-to-peer sharing. So we have 3 LAQI learning collaboratives that are running this year. There is one focused on access to care, which is really looking at care from the perspective of the mom and the baby. So prenatal care, postnatal care, well child visits, providers, all of that good stuff that goes into making sure that mom and baby have the care that they need. And supporting programs really and engaging with providers within the community, because we know how tricky that can be. The second collaborative we have running this year is the Family Retention and Engagement Collaborative, and this is our second year running the collaborative in this way, but it's actually our 3rd or 4th year really working on retention. We've been doing that for a while and have refined the change package several times because of all the awesome work that you all have engaged in and all the learnings that you've done over time. So we're excited that this work has continued, and there are a number of teams that are focusing in efforts on really authentic authentically engaging families in services and working towards retaining families for as long as you possibly can, hopefully to program graduation or completion. And last but not least, we have our Early Language and Literacy Learning Collaborative, and this is our second year in a row running this collaborative. This collaborative was in high demand last year. There were lots and lots of teams that wanted to participate, and we know that some of you weren't able to last year but have joined this year. This collaborative is really focusing in on what you do within home visiting to support early language and literacy development, and we have several teams that are working within this collaborative. So that's just a little bit of the lay of the landscape of the learning collaboratives that are happening this year. And now really I am going to stop talking and turn it over to all of you. And we're going to kick things off with the Access to Care Collaborative doing some sharing. And the questions you see here on the screen are the same questions that we shared ahead of time, asking your team to put a little bit of thought into these questions and share a couple of things with others on the line today. So the first question that we asked you to consider are, what are some early improvement wins for your team? And what have you learned so far from your improvement efforts? We know that you're only just about 2 months into your efforts with your QI Learning Collaborative work, but we also know that you all have done a lot already and likely have some very exciting things to share with others here today. So I am going to ask that the Access to Care Collaborative kick us off. I can either go through and ask team by team to share, or I can first open up the lines and see if there are a couple of teams in that collaborative that want to kick the sharing off, and then perhaps some of the rest of you can chime in. I know that some of you are working in very similar drivers and even testing very similar changes. So one thing I would ask you to do is listen for those things, and as teams are sharing that you have something to share sort of in the like work that you're doing, please chime in at that time. And remember, in order to speak, you want to unmute your microphone, and you can do that just by clicking on your microphone. If you're on the phone, I know we have very few people that are just on the phone. You would want to unmute your phone when you are ready to share. So do I have a brave team that's willing to kind of kick us off with the Access to Care Collaborative? We have, in terms of teams participating, Early Head Start, Genesee, Ingham, and Saginaw. There are 2 Nurse Family Partnership teams, Ingham and Oakland, and there are 2 HFA teams, Healthy Families Northern Michigan and Kent.
Hey, Robin, this is Elise. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. So we actually stole a resource from Oakland NFP for postpartum education, and it was called your 6-week checkup. So they probably know better what I'm talking about than how I'm explaining it currently. But it really talks about the purpose of the postpartum visit and why you would go and questions you might want to think about asking your doctor. And so we have found that to be helpful so far, but we're still in our testing phase right now of using that resource. But so far it's going pretty well. And another thing outside of our specific test we're running is that Carrie from MPHI was super helpful in getting us a spreadsheet document that tells us, if you put in the child's birthday, exactly when all the well child visits, like what the windows are then. It calculates that. So even though that's not specifically part of our PDSA, we're finding it super, super helpful. And so I wanted to mention that because she had mentioned being willing to share that with other sites too.
Thank you, Elise. That's awesome. We're so glad to hear that that tool is working well for tracking and calculating well child visit dates. And it's so awesome that you are using the postpartum checkup resource that Oakland NFP tested, I believe, last year through some of the improvement work that they were doing within their program specifically. I'm going to take pause and ask if Oakland NFP, if you have anything that you'd like to chime in and add here, or anybody else within this collaborative that might be working on something similar. Okay, Saginaw EHS chatted in through the chat box, which I'm sure you all can see as well, but their team is working on offering incentives for parents to get their well child visits or prenatal visits completed in a timely manner. And they said that the parents are having a positive response to hearing that they will get an incentive if their child's well child visit is completed. That's really neat, team. We look forward to hearing a little bit more about what you find with that change that you're testing as it unfolds. Oh dear, Michelle, I see your note that you have your phone unmuted, but we don't think you're hearing. We are not hearing you. We will do a check on our end and see if we might be able to help you out. Let's see here.
It's now showing her unmuted.
Okay, we're showing you as unmuted on our end, Michelle. Maybe try and talk again. Oh goodness, we are so sorry you're having so many technical difficulties. We'll keep working with you, Michelle, to see if we can't get that to work.
Robin, this is Keisha from Genesee Early.
Hi, Keisha.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. We also have the access to care, and so far, I'll say we've completed about half of what we plan on doing. We have created a chart for the home visitors to take out and complete once a month. This chart keeps track of well visits that are currently due for kids on our caseloads, and it also charts those that have been completed. And we also have another chart we created for prenatal visits for a pregnant mom as well as postpartum visits for our pregnant moms. We also plan to contact physicians' offices around the community so that we can build relationships with them, so we can have consistent contact persons, so it's not always different home visitors always contacting the same office. We may have one go-to person for this office or one go-to person for that office. That part we haven't quite started yet. Our family service coordinator was gone out for a month and she just came back this week. So we are going to begin to work that one out, but the charts we have already began to use. The charts are allowing us to basically just keep up with who's due and when they're due, and those who we need to send reminders to have their well visits done.
That's great, and that sounds similar to, in some ways, to the tool that Elise was talking about that Kent HFA is using, that Carrie was able to provide them with to like calculate the well child visit. So I think maybe you'll have some notes to compare there as you continue testing.
Okay.
It looks like in the chat box, there was a good question from Kalamazoo NFP wondering what type of incentive Saginaw Early Head Start is providing to support visit completion with moms and babies. And Saginaw EHS let us know that they are providing things such as diapers, wipes, cleaning supplies, small wooden puzzles, doorknob covers, stove knob covers, cabinet latches, first aid kits, bus passes, etc. Thanks, Saginaw EHS, for letting us know that. Michelle, we are still trying to work on your phone challenge, and we actually aren't seeing the 313 area code for phone number on the participant list. So we will do our best to continue working back and forth with you. I'm so sorry that you're having all of these challenges this morning.
I misunderstood the question. She's talking about the number that she called, not her number.
Oh, thank you, Brenda. Michelle, well, actually, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. If you could let us know your phone number for the phone that you're called in with, I think we might be able to do a little bit of troubleshooting on our end. So that's the number. I'm sorry that I might be a little confusing there. Awesome. What else are folks focusing in on in the Access to Care collaborative, either like the teams that have shared so far this morning, or maybe you're trying something a little bit different out to support this work with the families that you're working with, or maybe doing something internally to support the work that you do as a program in this area. Okay, I'm wondering if maybe Ingham NFP, if you're on the line, if maybe you can share a little bit about what you are doing for your Access to Care collaborative work.
Hi, this is Celeste from Ingham. Can you guys hear me?
We sure can, Celeste.
So we are doing something semi-similar to what has already been shared, but we are testing a postpartum protocol internally that identifies like specific timeframes that the nurses are implementing the education to clients. So we were all doing the education, but it was at different timeframes. So we really wanted to kind of hone in on the 32 to 36 weeks gestation, as well as that first postpartum visit, and helping the clients like connecting with their OBGYN to make that appointment. So right now we're just using a postpartum education forum that another nurse was using. We don't have one internally for nurse-family partnership. So we just started testing it, and I think our testing will be done in April. So we're really just capturing if the nurses are following the protocol, as well as how many clients we were able to present that education to. And then eventually what we want to do is maybe shamelessly steal from Oakland NFP their checkup resource or their postpartum checkup resource and get clients' feedback like before the education and after, so we can really capture like what our clients are saying, if this was helpful education, and etc. So.
That's awesome, Celeste, and I love all the shamelessly stealing that's going on. And I should say, too, that the postpartum checkup tool is available for folks to take a closer look at. And when I get to some of the reminders at the end of today, I will remind you where some of the resources are right now that you can access really easily on the web if you are interested in taking a closer peek. I'm grateful to hear that tool is working so well for everyone, and kudos to Oakland for being our first testers of that tool, and thank you so much for sharing. Michelle is letting us know that their team, Oakland NFP, is really working on increasing well childcare, and that they're working particularly and focusing on reaching out to the pediatricians within their community to develop and foster a richer connection and relationship with them to support their families in getting well childcare. And Michelle says that they've developed a letter to send to the pediatricians, and I'm guessing, Michelle, and feel free to chat in as you're able. I'm really sorry that you can't unmute, but I'm guessing in that letter you're introducing the program, kind of letting them know a little bit what you're about, or reminding them what Nurse-Family Partnership is all about, and why you want to have that connection with them. And it looks like, too, the team is planning to follow up with phone calls and presentations to have those in-person touch points as well. We can't wait to hear how that goes. Okay, how about Healthy Families Northern Michigan? Anything that you're doing that is like or maybe different than some of the other teams in this collaborative? You might have to unmute yourselves.
Can you hear me?
Sure can, Ashley.
Okay, I am so sorry. I literally just got on the webinar like 3 minutes ago, so I'm not really sure. You want me to share what we're doing for Learning Collaborative?
Yeah, so I'm so sorry, Ashley, I didn't know that you just joined. Yeah, we are doing Learning Collaborative sharing, and folks are sharing sort of what they're honing in and focusing in on their first cycle within the Access to Care Learning Collaborative, and any early improvement wins you've had or anything you've learned so far from your efforts.
So currently we've looked at our rates for well childs and we're feeling like they're very off. So right now we're currently just kind of working on kind of doing like a chart audit with all of our home visitors, and kind of using the HVOL family timeline to like go through and highlight and make sure that we have entered all of the well childs that we know that they did do. And after we do that chart audit, just kind of seeing where we're at with that. And then if we don't notice an improvement in that, then we plan on moving forward with our second project with something a little bit more intensive to get those well childs up.
That's awesome, Ashley. Any questions for the Healthy Families or their Michigan team? Anything you want to hear a little bit more about? All righty. I don't think that I missed anybody in this collaborative. I know that Ingham Early Head Start is trying to share, but Kelly is on the line, but she's on her phone and she's having trouble being able to share with us, and she can't access the chat, so she just let me know. So Ingham, if you have anything that you want to share with the good of the group, you can always feel free to reply to the email message that we sent out for this webinar. That's always a good way to connect to. Or if there's anybody that you want to connect more closely with, you can always reach out to me and I can make sure that happens. Okay, let's dive into the Family Retention and Engagement Learning Collaborative. We have a couple parents as teachers teams, Genesee and Van Buren participating. We have a couple early Head Starts, Oakland and Washtenaw. We have several NFP teams, Kent, Berry, and Calhoun and Saginaw, and we have one HFA team participating in this collaborative, Wayne. So I'm going to ask if somebody in this collaborative can kind of kick off our conversation, and as folks who are participating have things to add to, I invite you to do that. And remember, you want to unmute your microphone when you're speaking so that we can hear you.
Hey guys, this is Emily from Kent NFP, and we're working on embedding families into programming infrastructure. And so we're still in our planning phase. We created a survey to give to clients to find out who would be interested in either providing programmatic feedback, helping plan events. We also asked if they have any special like hobbies or interests that they would want to share with their team or program. And so far we've had really good results. We've had 29 clients that would like to participate in some way, whether it's like a focus group or individually providing feedback with a nurse, or helping us plan our upcoming like summer picnic or Mother's Day event. So we're pretty excited to actually get the parents in and start utilizing their like strengths and feedback and perspective.
That's amazing, Emily and team. We are so excited to hear that you had such a great response in terms of interest of parents really wanting to engage and participate. And I'm guessing that some folks on the line might even be interested in seeing that survey and perhaps thinking about how they can use it with their own program. So if that's something that you're willing to share, you can always feel free to send it to Angela or myself, and we can ensure that it gets to you.
Sure, we can do that. I'll get it sent over to Angela.
Awesome, thank you. Is anybody else in this collaborative working on something similar or something different that you can share with the group today?
Hi, this is the Van Buren team, Van Buren Parents as Teachers. So we focused on the building, well, we know that, right? The building the trusting, well, no, we don't. Building a trusting relationship. And one of the things that our data told us was that it didn't appear that our home visitors were doing a very strong job of communicating with families when they had missed visits. So families that didn't get visited in a month, any kind of follow-up communication, whether that was an email, a text, a phone call, or even a drop-by. So that is what we have focused on by monitoring, the supervisor monitoring that data out of our visit tracker system. We have already seen an improvement. At this point, we're not sure, well, we know that part of that improvement has come from the staff doing a better job of documenting the work they are doing. So, in some cases, it's just that they might have been trying to contact a family, but they just weren't documenting it. I think she's hearing me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can, Lisa.
Okay.
That's great.
I just didn't hear anything. So I mean, that is what we're working on, even to the point of having discussions, how do we stay connected? We have families that go on hold because they maybe go to Mexico for 2-3 months in the wintertime, or maybe in the spring they're really just working 60, 70 hours a week in the agricultural business, and they really can't, they can't add home visits right at that point, but how do we keep engaged with them? So, yep, so kind of early on, but have seen an improvement, if nothing else, in documentation. So.
That's fantastic. And those early improvement wins are so helpful in knowing whether you're moving forward in a good direction for the challenge that you're trying to tackle. And it sounds like you all are. And you have a challenging population that you're working with, too, with the fact that, you do have families that you can't provide services to on an ongoing basis from month to month necessarily. So really thinking outside the box of how you can keep those folks engaged so that you don't lose them in your program is fantastic. It looks like we have some conversation going on in the chat box, which is wonderful. Saginaw NFP let us know that they also created and sent out a program survey to their clients via SurveyMonkey, and they got some great feedback from their clients and were able to get a lot of good information to work with. And I see that Emily from Kent NFP has already asked if the team would be willing to share the survey they sent out, and Saginaw is going to send it along to Angela. And so we will make sure that the surveys get shared with everybody on the line, because I know that even if you didn't indicate interest, you might have some interest and it could be helpful to the work that you're engaged in. So thanks so much for sharing those tools. Others on the line who haven't shared yet and might be working on something similar or something different. And what early improvement wins have you had so far? I know we haven't heard yet from Berrien or Calhoun NFP, Wayne HFA. I think we're still waiting to hear a little bit from both of the early Head Start teams, Oakland and Washtenaw. And Genesee PAT, I believe you're on the line as well.
Good morning, this is Angela. Can you hear me?
Sure can, Angela.
What we're working on right now is meeting the family needs. And so what we're in the process of doing is updating our resource manual to make sure that the resources are up to date and they're in the family's community.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So we want to look at if we provide referrals in the family's community, will the families follow up with those particular referrals?
Awesome. So trying to make sure that those referral sources are hopefully somewhat close to home so that those connections can be made. Excellent.
Hi, this is Marquita from Genesee PAT, And something that we're working on is increasing the number of parents in our advisory board and on our CQI project. We are in the process of transitioning one of our parents through our CQI team. Her child will be aging out. So we're looking at developing some language that parents can kind of dive into and understand of what the overall process and what we're looking for a parent member or parent representation on a leadership role in any of our advisory groups or QI projects.
That's awesome. I know that figuring out how to get parents engaged in your program and have them take up some of those roles in the work that you're engaged in can be tricky, but it sounds like you're being really planful about that and even planning ahead knowing that you have a parent that's transitioning out. So awesome work there, team.
Yes. Thank you.
Do either one of our early Head Start teams on the line have something to share about the work that you've been engaged in Oakland or Washtenaw? It looks like Barry and NFP just chatted in, and they are working on a celebratory event to see if holding those events will increase the number of visits completed for the clients that attend the event. Ooh, interesting. I bet this group will be excited to hear how that works out for all of you. Thanks for sharing. And Wexford Masaki PAT chatted in, and I know Wexford Masaki, you are working on some quality planning efforts, but way to go on pulling out something that somebody else brought up within this work. And that team is working on building an advisory team from scratch. So they're interested in ideas that others have when it comes to that piece of work. So thank you for sharing, Wexford Masaki. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Early Language and Literacy QI Learning Collaborative. And in this collaborative, we have several Healthy Families America teams participating. We have Healthy Families Upper Peninsula, Muskegon, Kalamazoo, and Saginaw. We've got a couple nurse family partnerships, Kalamazoo and Detroit. And we have several parents as teachers, St. Clair, Washtenaw, and Kent. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and see if somebody can kick us off with some sharings on early improvement wins or things you've learned so far in your early language and literacy learning collaborative work.
Hi, this is Karen. Can you hear me?
You sure can, Karen.
Hi. So we're with the Kent PAT, and we are working on using the CAR, C-A-R, comment, pause, ask, pause, and respond with our families. And we're giving that handout at every one of the visits in the beginning, and then we're asking the parents again each time if they're using that, because our goal is to increase the communication scores on the ASQ for our selected group of kids. So we're continuing to do that as well as other literacy discussions, but the CAR handout is our big project right now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Karen. And I bet this group will want to hear how that kind of works out for all of you, especially when we're together in May, because I'm not sure that we've had any teams test that yet in this collaborative. So that's really awesome. Any questions for the Kent PAT team or others on the line, things that you want to share that you're engaged in with this particular learning collaborative?
Hi, this is Heather from Muskegon HFA,
And what we are working on in Muskegon is kind of using reflective supervision to track how we're discussing and promoting early language and literacy during home visits. And we created a tracker that we've been using, and actually we were kind of surprised because it provided a lot of insight as far as we're still doing a very good job at promoting literacy, but what the tracker showed us was that there's definitely room for improvement. So that has been a big goal for us in March. So we've got some creative ideas that we've come up with to promote early language and literacy. We've got a trip to a library coming up in the next month or so. One thing that we were sort of surprised about, though, with our ASQ scores is we have very few children who are scoring in the black and the gray. So that's kind of been just kind of an unexpected sort of challenge, I guess, that we're dealing with in Muskegon.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Heather. I'm going to take pause and ask if anybody has any questions for the work that Muskegon HFA is engaged in, or anything else that you would like to share. I know that Julie from Saginaw HFA, you chatted in letting us know that you have been trying to give input, but we can't hear you. And I would say that we have not been able to hear you. I'm not sure what's going on with the phone lines. It sounds like for the few of you that joined via phone lines, for some reason, when you're unmuting, we're not hearing you on mute on your end. And I'm so sorry. So Julie, if you want to use the chat box and do any sharing through there, I am more than happy to verbally share and help engage the group in conversation around the work that you all are doing. Oh, you're so fast. Julie says that for their team, they, through their efforts, are seeing that some of their parents have already been responding to nonverbal communication cues with their children and just don't realize it, which has enabled the home visitors to reinforce how well they're doing with the good parenting skills. And in April, they're going to document families who have observed implementing appropriate response to nonverbal communication cues. So really kind of focusing in on those things that parents might not be noticing themselves and pointing them out so that they can become a little bit more observant on what they're doing with their kiddos. Thank you so much, Julie, for sharing what Saginaw is working on. And there's some great conversation going on in the chat box too right now around advisory teams. Michelle, thanks for offering some good ideas to the Wexford Misaki team on places to kind of get started with building that robust advisory board. Michelle offered that, they started with a lunch and learn to really bring a keynote speaker or speakers in on hot topics and send invites out to the community. They found that people are really interested in the speakers, and that's a good way to kind of get things started. Becky just shared that St. Clair PAT is including early language and literacy resources in local events in their monthly newsletter. It's one of their projects that they've listed, and that newsletter goes to hundreds of families, not just parents as teachers' families. They're not sure how impactful it is to show change in the data yet, but they're going to wait and see. Thanks so much, Becky, for sharing that. Other early wins or things you've learned so far from your improvement work in the Early Language and Literacy Collaborative that would be helpful to share with this group today. Thank you all so much for this great conversation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward into our next group of work that's going on. And we actually already had some good conversation going for this group because Wexford Misaki has chimed in with a couple of things that you all have been focused in on with your quality planning efforts. But we have 3 Parents as Teachers programs, Wexford Misaki PAT, Delta Schoolcraft PAT, and Eastern Upper Peninsula PAT, who are all focusing in on quality planning efforts. And I'm hoping that each of you can just briefly share what topic areas your team is zeroing zeroing in on for this work, and what you've learned so far from your efforts. I know that some of you have just really started diving in and getting going, but any learnings that would be good to share with this group, or anything just like the Wexford Misaki team shared that you might want to hear a little bit more about from the folks on the line who might have some ideas or things to share. I'm going to go to Wexford Misaki first and see if you have anything to share. And I just see that, Kara, you just chatted in what you all are working on through the chat box. So I'll move to you next. But Wexford Misaki, anything you want to add in addition to the advisory board work that you're doing?
We are working on the advisory team, and we love the ideas that we just got today to help build that advisory board team. And then Berrien County, love to thank them. They're helping us big time with an SOP example. Our program's been around, but we haven't run like a clean PAT program. So we're kind of building from the bottom up. It's a lot of work. And Berrien helped give us an example, and that's awesome. We've been trying to break up the portions among our team doing this SOP and kind of having each team member with their strengths work on that portion of the SOP. And Robin helped us with a goal breakdown with dates, target dates. That seems not so overwhelming with the target dates. Seems more attainable for our main goal with the little bits going. So that's big helping. We're meeting weekly for our SOP, and that's going great. We're pretty much on target for our dates that we have that Robin made us.
And we had one more meeting the 90-day requirements. We're at the as part of the SOP project, we're also really nailing down what all is required in the first 90 days. One of the challenges that we found is that a lot of our clients frequently cancel or reschedule, and we live in rural areas, so being able to account for that travel time and rescheduling, that's been a challenge that we're trying to focus on, because as you know, it's easier to hit all of your targets in 90 days if they're meeting regularly.
But yes, with our awesome northern Michigan weather, we had a lot of cancellations.
21 snow days.
Yeah, 21 snow days due to safety and just not even being able to get down roads. So that is a challenge.
That's great, Wexford Misaki team. Thank you so much for sharing all of those great things that you're working on. And for anybody on the line that might not know, I don't know if everybody knows what SOP means, but that's really getting at standard operating procedures. And PAT has quite large requirements around what needs to be documented there in order to work towards Blue Ribbon accreditation. So the Wexford Misaki team is really focusing in hard on making sure that they have some good detailed standard operating procedures through their work this year. Thanks again, team, for sharing. Great work. I'm going to move to Eastern Upper Peninsula. Kara, thank you so much for chatting in through the chat box. I know all of you can see this, but I'm just going to share a couple of highlights from their team. So their team is focusing in on building their caseload. They had some staff turnover this year and are working to recover from that. They're also working on learning more about the quality endorsement and improvement process, which is the process that parents as teachers programs engage in to move to going through Blue Ribbon accreditation for their program. So they're working on learning more about that, and also really digging into their annual progress report and working to make some improvements in focused areas within their annual progress report where they have some room for improvement. So those things include visit frequency, group connections, and strengthening community partners surrounding the value and importance of home visitation. Kara also said that through some small but powerful changes, they've already noticed some awesome increases in visit frequency and family engagement. One example that they've engaged in to increase visits expectations is moving from biweekly to weekly visits during that first 90-day period of having a family enrolled in Parents as Teachers, and then kind of reassessing the need for either continued weekly visits or moving to that more common biweekly visit schedule at that time. They've seen great results in that already. Parent interest and engagement is going strong in their program. Congrats, team. And Karen says that they just submitted their QEIP at Kent, and they're so excited. Karen, thank you so much for reaching out. And Karen says, feel free to email her if you need help or advice. It's a lot of work, but she said totally worth it. And yes, big congratulations to the Kent team. That is a lot of work, and it's wonderful. And it looks like Michelle said that they're still working on theirs. So Parents as Teachers programs, as you all are working through the QEI pre-process or beginning to engage in it, feel free to do some good sharing with one another, because I think there's lots to learn there. Okay, I'm going to move to Delta Schoolcraft PAT. Highlights that you want to share of things that you are focusing in on, team, and your work together.
Hey, this is Tiffany, and I'm here with Sarah, and then Cheryl is in the other county sitting in listening. So kind of the same theme. We're moving into QEIP process, the quality endorsement improvement, and we're working on our APR. But we've had a lot of good group connection work. I think it's good to note we kind of have partnered with some of the staff at the ISD, so we'll have a speech pathologist or a speaker at some of our group connection meetings. So that gives the parents some time to meet with a speaker, and then also gives them a little bit of respite, because some of these parents have kids with disabilities, so it gives them a little time away, and then we do an activity and then bring them all together for that parent-child interaction. So that's was a little slow to start, but now that word is out, we've been getting a lot of families that have attended that, so it's been really great.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tiffany and team. And if anybody has any tips and tricks to offer around group connections, because I know that those are tricky, and I know that several of you have worked on them or are currently engaging and working on them, feel free to share through the chat box, because I think any ideas are always welcomed. It's helpful to just keep trying and doing new things around group connections, because I know it can be tricky to engage families. Thank you so much, 3 quality planning teams. Great work so far, and we really appreciate the sharing that you did this morning. Okay, and last but not least, I'm going to move us into our LA-specific QI efforts. And we have many teams that are engaging in quality improvement work within your specific local implementing agency program. And you have all picked some great topic areas to focus in on. I think there's some good cross sort of program topic areas happening that you may not know about, because you're doing some individual efforts in this area. So it would be really helpful if as you're doing some sharing, if you could let everybody know what topic of focus you are sort of zeroing in on at the moment. If you've had some early improvement wins for your team and what you've learned so far from your efforts. I'm going to go ahead and just open it up. As I said, we have many teams participating in this. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, LAAs, all the Nurse Family Partnership, HFA, EHS, and PAT teams that are funded through that funding stream are participating in these efforts. And then we have many MDE 32P4 LAAs that are participating in LA-specific efforts. There's several Parents as Teachers teams that are engaged in this work. We have a couple of early Head Start teams, and then Kent Baby Scholars, PALS program is also engaged in this work. So if somebody could kick us off and let us know your topic, and I would also invite you as you're listening in, if you're working on a similar topic, to maybe follow suit in the conversation after a team's finished sharing, so we can kind of see where there might be some overlap in topic areas that are happening.
Hi, this is Maureen from Ottawa. Can you guys hear me?
You sure can, Maureen.
Awesome. So our topic area is visit frequency, specifically focused on families with 2 or more stressors. We were not meeting our required number of visits annually. So really our efforts have been twofold. When we looked at individual visit frequency numbers, we wanted those families that were behind, we wanted to play catch up and do some makeup visits. And then we wanted to be proactive for new families coming in, just seeing families weekly for the first month, really explaining in detail what our program in PAT looks like and the expectations for families and what the commitment is. We also stole something from Varian, offering to do a practice visit so families can see exactly what a visit looks like. And really, like I already mentioned, the big one is rescheduling those missed visits. We also had some snow day challenges this year. We also, our parent educators, we have 6 of them and they're all part-time. So we also have to watch hours so we don't go over our budget. So that's tricky when trying to see the kids on your caseload and making up visits. But we have had huge success just implementing those things. Our percent in January for the whole group was 50%. Because of the snow days, I'm sorry, that was December. December was 50%. Because of all those snow days, we actually dipped down to 44% in January. But I ran the numbers this week and we're at 80%. And we were focused on 3 parent educators and 3 specific families, just getting their numbers up. And 2 out of the 3 have increased immensely. So we are well on our way.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Maureen. And it's great that you've seen some early improvement wins, despite probably when you got started with us, you were thinking, oh dear, our visit frequency is getting worse. But there were some variables working against you there that unfortunately are hard to control. And our Michigan winters are just so challenging. Becky says that she's wondering how many PAT programs in Michigan might have trouble meeting the requirements for visit frequency this year due to snow days. That's a great question, Becky. I don't know if anybody else on the line that is working within a PAT program wants to shed some light on that. I also wanted to ask, too, if anybody else is working on visit frequency and might have some thoughts to add when it comes to this topic area for improvement.
We've had about 10 snow days here in the UP for just us specifically, but we're just really going to try and get out in the spring and increase our visits weekly. I don't know what else to do, honestly.
Thanks for sharing, Tiffany. And Tiffany and team are from the Eastern UPPAT program. That's helpful. Others' thoughts, others that are working on visit frequency as an area for improvement right now.
Hi, this is Karen at Kent. So, so my problem with my staff with the visitation is that they get paid for snow days. So their days dwindle down, but their visitations still remain. So that's been a super challenge for them because they're working their tail off to try to get in all those visits. So we're doing the best we can and just praying when we get down to the end that we've got enough in. But it's a challenge, especially this time of year, because a lot of families seem to lose interest in the program and are busy in the spring. So we're really climbing an uphill battle here, but my team is doing a great job trying to get those visits in.
Thanks, Karen. It looks like a lot of the PAT teams are chiming in and saying that, yep, the snow days are a challenge and you're trying to figure out creative ways of making up visits as best you can with the circumstances that you are working within. Saginaw EHS says that their home visitors are trying to double up per week to get in as many home visits as they can, which can be really tough for families who may only have 1 day a week for home visits. But that's one of the ways that their team is trying to make up visits, and they have weekly home visits. So that is tricky, but kudos to you, Saginaw EHS, for trying to do as much as you can to make sure families are getting the services that they need. Other topic areas that teams are working on for improvement with your LA-specific QI efforts. I know that Saginaw EHS chimed in, and they let us know that they're really focusing in on parent-child interactions using the Piccolo, which is the parent-child interaction observation tool that the program uses to measure. And the home visitors are using a handout that is titled 29 Things to Do With, or 29 things parents do that predict school readiness from the Piccolo, and really focusing in on this for 1 to 2 visits. So their team is working hard on those parent-child interactions, and I'm not sure if anybody else on the line might be working on parent-child interactions as an area for improvement currently.
Hi, this is Marquita from Genesee PAT, and we are not working on that specific area of improvement, but something that we are working on is our area of referrals made to families. And so we noticed that the referrals made to families is being recorded inconsistently, and it's making like our data inaccurate and making things difficult to track. So something that we've done is I kind of recreated the parents as teachers referral connection record to make it more feasible for home visitors to use, making it a one-page document, but still including all the pertinent information required for parents as teachers. And so going through and making sure that all files have that document embedded in their files, and then also reaching out to our data team to kind of reconstruct our data system called Synergy, to make it more feasible for data entry for staffing, to make it exactly meet the need of the exact form that's created in parents as teachers. And so really to include all those drop downs of the resources that are being referred to parents. And so we know that the work is happening, but a matter of it being documented correctly. We know that parents are getting the needs met, and home visitors are providing those community resources to families, but just a matter of making sure that it's being documented and recorded accurately throughout the program wide. We do have a huge resource connection with our collaborative, and they've created a community resource book, and home visitors are able to quickly refer to that and guide families into community resources. And so, like I said before, we know that the work is happening, but just a matter of making sure it's being documented and recorded accurately was our challenge, or something that we saw was an area of growth for our program. And so we're really seeing some growth in that. I know previously we looked at our data from January to like October-ish, and it was only about 9 referrals made. And I'm like, oh no, I know that home visitors are making things happen, but this cannot be accurate. And so going through each file, fine-tooth combing, and finding out the referrals are being made, but just not recorded accurately. So that's something that we've been working on. We've actually seen some growth in that area. And then we're still working on the actual maintenance of the database. And so I'm still reaching out to our data tech to get that finalized and what it will look like for data entry for our staff.
That's great, Marquita. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that the documentation piece can be really tricky for lots of programs, and so zeroing in on that and learning more about what's happening and what's not happening, and figuring out how you can make sure that the documentation is there as a program is really, really great effort. And referrals are so tricky because there's lots of different sort of pass-off, handoff points that happen in between, and so that's an especially tricky place to focus your efforts, but a really great place to focus your efforts, because you want to know what happens with those referrals that you're providing to families, and you want to have that documentation so you also understand those strong referral sources that you have in your community. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody have any questions for Genesee PAT or anything you want to add about referrals?
This is Carrie at Healthy Families UP.
Hi, Carrie.
We're working on making sure that the service referrals are followed up on within that 30-day window. Excuse me. And we've learned since the middle of January that a more consistent reminder from myself and Kim, our supervisor, to the home visitors, they'd kind of forgotten that 30-day time period when they get kicked into the report and HVAL saying that, they're older than 30 days, they need to be followed up on. And so we've gone since January with 28% of service referrals older than 30 days to only 2.5% at the beginning of this month. So I reached out to home visitors earlier this week to ask them about that, and they said, really, it was just being reminded that it needs to be followed up on in that 30 days, not just because of that time window, but because of the importance of that referral to that family and making sure they're getting what they need. They made the referral for a reason, so let's make sure they actually follow up on that and get that done. So it's a matter of documentation and working with the families and making sure that's getting done. So I think we're going to be able to close out this this QI project rather quickly and move on to some other things. But it's nice when there's a simple fix and you see some good progress in a short period of time.
Wow, that's amazing, Carrie. And I think that really illustrates the impact of such a small change of just having those reminders and having those conversations, and how that can really affect the work that you're doing and support the work that you're doing. So great work. And we're really looking forward to seeing how that cycle sort of concludes through the storyboard that you share when you wrap it up. That's great.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. There's some great conversation going on in the chat box about visits and different ways to kind of catch up on some of those visits and different ways of doing visits. So thank you all for continuing to engage in that conversation. I'm going to take pause and see if there's anything else anybody would like to chime in about here before we move into our QI Advisors Corner for the morning.
Robin, this is Keisha from Genesee Early Head Start.
Hi, Keisha.
Hi. Our subject matter is data quality. With our data quality, we would like to improve the quality of tracking and reporting child and family data in REDCap. We still have problems with REDCap. So we are trying to come up with ways to improve the data that we're reporting to you guys. Currently, we are working on setting up a date and time where MPHI can come out and do like a REDCap training for us. Those dates haven't been done or set up yet, so we're kind of still just waiting on that. It's April? Well, we got it in April from what Vicki just told me. We set it in April. So hopefully in April, once we get that REDCap training, that will help us to provide more accurate data in the REDCap.
Thank you for sharing that, Keisha. And yes, data quality is can be a challenge, and I think we sort of heard that come through too, even from Genesee PAT and your sharings around the documentation around referrals, and realizing that there was good work happening with that referral follow-up, but the information that you need to have within your data system so that you can really for sure say, yep, that referral was followed up on was a little bit lacking. And so you had to really dig into that and learn about it and figure out what was going on in order to support making some improvements in that area. So data quality is definitely something that many teams work on, and I know that we have lots of teams that are focusing in on that this year in particular. So good work, all. I'm going to invite you all to continue to engage in conversation through the chat around other LA-specific improvement efforts that you are engaged in, and or continue the great conversations that are going on right now. And I'm going to move us forward into our CQI advisor corner. And I'm actually going to share.
Oh, can you hear me?
I'm going to pass things off to Brenda, who is going to kind of take us through this piece of our time together today. And as I said, please continue to engage through the chat, and we will continue to monitor that and support you all as needed. Thanks so much. And without further ado, Brenda.
So I'm going to take over. Okay. I don't think so. Okay. So I'm going to take over from Robin here. Let me know in the chat box if you cannot hear me. I guess if you can't hear me, can't hear me. But we've heard a fantastic amount of sharing today, which is exactly what we want for these types of calls. Lots of sharing, and I heard lots of references to stealing from one another, and that is absolutely a fantastic way to go because you're using things that someone else has tried, so they can share the pitfalls as well as the great things that happen. So it's good to tap into others who have used tools that sound interesting to you for not just the tool but also their experiences using it. So we are going to dive into using data for improvement today, and not just thinking about how do you chart this or that, but thinking about how data can work for you, not just in quality planning, but also in QI, because you all are engaging in quality planning and QI on an ongoing basis, whether you know it or not. It's always there. So we wanted to give a general overview of the importance of data for improvement in planning. Looking at it regularly really helps you to learn about what you're doing, helping you to achieve what you're doing well, areas where there might be opportunities for improvement or more planning around exactly what the process is, and then moving above and beyond the fidelity performance for your model, because each and every one of you has those particular pieces from your model that they require and set as a benchmark, and then you may also have things from your agency or different funders. So data is a great way to look at all those different pieces, see how you're doing, and then assess as a team with your home visitors and staff input, exactly what does that mean? Looking at the data information you have at hand, what does it mean? And what are they telling you? And I love this quote that Robin found more recently, which is, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So data is super important for kind of cementing exactly what the results are for what you're trying out or what is happening currently. So how do we learn to make data work for us? Every model, again, has those minimum standards that you're required to meet, or agencies. And data can help you identify, again, those areas that are definitely in need of improvement. So maybe they're not meeting the model standard, or what you need for Blue Ribbon, or what you need for accreditation, the different things that your models or your programs require. Areas that are doing okay, so you've met that standard but could be even better. I know lots of home visitors came into this work because you are passionate about it. You may not be passionate about data, but you are passionate about the families. So looking to your data that may be performing okay, but your home visitors are like, we could make this even better for this or that particular area that they're interested in. Again, moving above and beyond your fidelity, areas in which you're doing well, but you'd like to reach even richer outcomes for staff and families. I mean, it depends upon the planning and the change that you're doing. It may be targeted at something that enhances the working life of your staff. It could be something that enhances interactions with families. It really depends. But really thinking about what your data are telling you and how you could use it to move forward even further. So as you move through using data for improvement, again, you use it in both quality planning and quality improvement. Especially in quality planning, you're going to move through gathering data about the process. You may need to create a new process, or I know many of you have found that you thought that there was a process, but it wasn't standardized across different staff members or between different sites of your program. There's always a learning curve when you're gathering data about the process, about finding out exactly what is happening. Is everyone consistently following the same steps? Are you consistently following the steps at all? Are you satisfied with the process? This is where it's really important to talk to everyone who touches that process to find out, is that process working for everyone? Because if it's not working for them, we find in the past that staff are more likely to drop pieces of a process if they don't think that it's working for them, and they may not tell you that that has happened. Are your clients satisfied with the process? We always encourage you to find out how your families feel about this. What are their experiences with the process? Because sometimes something seems like an awesome process from a staff level, but it really lands not so great with the clients. So it's important to involve them as well. And then, is your process having a good outcome? Because really that's the purpose of a process, is to make sure that that outcome is achieved because you're being consistent in the way that you're doing it. So another dimension of improvement that you use data for is really deciding, do you have a problem, and what problem is it that you have? A lot of times at the beginning of your planning or your QI cycle, you sit down as a team and determine exactly what is this problem, and that's where you bring in that baseline data to identify, is this really a problem, or did we just feel like it was a problem and then we looked at the data and that wasn't really our problem? There's something else here that is setting things off. You really want to determine upfront, is there a problem in the area that you thought it was, or did you just have that opinion, like the quote said, and what problem is it that you have? With the baseline, you want to have a clear understanding of where you're at currently and then set a goal for the team. So by the end of your planning or your improvement, where do you want to be in terms of your particular data that you're looking at? And then you're going to track it over time. And you have many different ways that you can track things. Several of you, depending upon the model, have data systems that are either recommended or required by your model, or you have ones that are recommended or required by your agency. Sometimes there are great things that can come out of those existing data systems in which you're already putting data. Sometimes you might have to add something else in to get at exactly what it is that you want to measure. You may need to use check sheets or Excel tracking. You may need to add in pre-post surveys with, say, staff or with families to gather a little bit more information. The importance is really thinking as a team, how can we track this? How can we get the data that we need? So you're going to collect your data over time, and this is important because you want to have a consistent approach. You want to have everyone who's collecting the data collect it in the same way and have the same understanding of what that data is or are. You'll want to use useful measures. You'll have an aim, which is your goal, that it definitely should relate to the process that you are improving. And then you may consider adding in balancing measures. And what we mean by balancing measures is looking at other areas that might be impacted by what you're doing to make sure that you're not accidentally setting the whole system off kilter. So if, for example, you focus on increasing intensity of visits, or the visit frequency and such, you'll also want to make sure that you're keeping an eye onto, are you keeping the program fully enrolled, or do you see that you're having an increasing amount of open slots because your staff are so focused on keeping the visits and making more and more visits happen with the families that you have. You want to be very sensitive to those things that are related to one another that could set each other off. You also want to analyze your data as you're going along, calculate your measures, and display your data so that you can all sit down as a team and look at what you have, look at it over time. And as you are looking at things over time, it's important to decide how frequently you're going to do that. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Just be careful not to go too long and create too long of a period, such as quarterly and definitely annually. Those particular points may not be granular enough for you to really have a feeling for, was that successful or not? You really need to look at things in general a little more frequently than that. Run charts are an especially useful data tool for seeing trends over time, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. So some considerations for developing or identifying measures. We use different terms, you'll notice, in coaching when we're talking to you about your measures. We'll talk about process versus outcome, and then proportions or counts. Process versus outcome, these are two distinct little paths. So the process is looking at assessing the parts of a process to determine how that part is working. So an example of a process measure, if you're working on, say, breastfeeding, if you're looking at a proportion for a process, it would be maybe the percent of pregnant moms who were given information about feeding options. So you're documenting that that part of distribution is happening in your process. Or it could be a count, the number of feeding plan toolkits that were distributed. Those are things related to that process that you have in place. The outcome is what is generally in your aim statement. You are looking at the end result of that process. So an example of a proportion for an outcome would be the percent of moms who enrolled pregnant who initiated breastfeeding. So the end result of that process that included distribution of materials. Or a count of the number of moms who initially planned not to breastfeed who did end up initiating breastfeeding. So again, a proportion or a count are two different ways to look at data. You may use both in your cycles. I see lots of times people using counts to measure a piece of a process, and then the outcome is a proportion. You'll want to make sure that you have very specific definitions of each of these measures so that everyone on the team who is collecting and implementing understands the pieces that are going into this. You'll want to be clear if you're using a proportion on what is your denominator and then what is your numerator. Your numerator is always a subset of who is in the denominator. So you don't want to be counting two totally different things on the top and the bottom of the proportion. It is targeting a group in the denominator, and then out of that group, what is the result? And that's your top in the numerator. So that's something important to keep in mind with your proportions. And again, the frequency with which you're going to collect and analyze the data. It's good to agree as a team early on how frequent it needs to be collected to really get a sense for how things are unfolding. An example might be in your particular process, you might want to collect early on to see how many of these particular flyers are being distributed, and think about, how are people receiving these. When you get to you might want to check in on that weekly or bi-weekly to see how things are going in that goal of getting to your end. And then what happens when we look at our data? This kind of decision tree is going to feel a little familiar for you, for those of you who have seen the team charter that has the adapt, adopt, abandon at the end of it. This is really kind of the mental decision tree that happens when you are looking at your data. So the first thing you're going to look at is, did you achieve that aim or goal that you had? Yes or no? If you choose yes, do you need to consider the context? Is there some little additional tweak that your team is like, it went really well, but we also heard maybe that this additional thing would help. Maybe you want to adopt it, but with a little bit of an enhancement next time. Or maybe it went just so perfectly smooth sailing that you just want to adopt it as is and move forward and continue to monitor your data over time to make sure that you're still sustaining it. The no side takes a little more thought. if you did not achieve your goal, did you get close? This is where considerations of context are super important. I heard lots today about our friend the polar vortex and how it has impacted us this year, the crazy amounts of snow. The context of that can help you understand what happened with your data when you were looking week to week or month to month, what happened with visits, what happened with those other pieces. So when you're thinking about did you get close, was there some contextual reason that held it back a little bit? Or was there something that you heard about from the families about the approach that maybe could be tweaked for next time? So if you're in that, we got close, but there was something contextual that was really outside of our purview and hopefully will not happen again as we move forward into spring, you can move into that yes, and we're going to maybe adapt a little bit or test for a little bit longer because we had this huge, snowstorm happen in the middle of our test. Maybe we need to test for just a little bit longer to see if it bounces back. Did you get close? No. You will know the context and your team will know the context. Was it such a kind of off-base idea that it landed poorly with the families or the staff and you need to kind of scrap that one and go find something else? That is where your abandon comes in. So whether you're working on quality planning or quality improvement, learning if you got closer to the goal, thinking about what that meant and how you will as a team best move forward. Are you going to adopt it? Are you going to tweak it a little bit? Or do you need to just put it in the dustbin and move on? So collecting good data, instruments, and procedures, you really want to collect your data in a way that's productive, productive for your team and helps alleviates all those little headaches that happen when it's not a well planned out data collection. So the first thing that you're going to do is decide upon a method, and this will really depend to a large degree upon what it is you're trying to measure. You may need to survey staff, you may need to survey families. Do you need to do observations, interviews, data collection forms? What is it that you need to have as a method for the data collection? And it might be something that's already built into your systems and your paperwork, or it might be something that you need to add on for a little bit to be able to document the data that you want to measure. Then you're going to move on to the what. You're going to define when to collect your data. Is it a point in time? Is it a pre-post? Is it a comparison group? Are you looking over time, biweekly or monthly at different data points of your program? And then have a process. You need to use the same steps and words across people and over time to make sure that you're all collecting the same thing the same way so that it is speaking to the same thing. Overall data tips, and we say this all the time, but I still feel like it's something that is hard for home visiting programs to hear because you're used to the message of your data need to be perfect for contractual compliance. In this instance, in quality planning and quality improvement, it's okay for it to be imperfect. It's the part of the reality of working with the data, especially data that come from families who are, we're all human. Knowing the weaknesses and context of your data is really an important piece here in being able to use that data to inform the decision-making process. Again, it's the context, and you all are deep in this every day. You know the context of your data. Data do not have to be complicated. They could be simple counts, check sheets, and such, just to give you an idea of how something is going. Data can feel unfamiliar at first, but getting used to data and using it in this way for quality planning and quality improvement gets easier each time. I swear it does. Just keep trying. Data is at the core of effectively planning and improving implementation of your model and program. And tools for using your data really do make it easier and more useful. You want to collect and move forward in a way that is meaningful to you. Look to others who have done this or done something similar that you're thinking about, which I know lots of you you were doing today in the chat box. Learn from others, borrow tools. And kind of the final point is it is your data. So we sometimes give you mechanisms for reporting it to aggregate it back, such as the learning collaboratives, but it's really yours. It's for your improvement. It's for your planning. You know the context. So really embrace it and use it to move forward in a way that's meaningful for you and your teams. So I wanted to stop and talk a little bit, and I hope that you all will be as free in sharing with this one as you were earlier, that I haven't exhausted you with talking through those last few slides. We really want to hear from you. What sorts of challenges have you faced in determining a measure for your current planning or improvement efforts? Or if you want to share a little bit about the measures that you're using for your current planning or improvement efforts.
Hi, this is Riley with Oakland PAT. We actually just talked with Lauren yesterday, and we found out that with our original way, we wanted to increase our group connections, and we were saying that we wanted to improve it by 50%, but our number was a count of the number of families attending. So she helped us kind of get that in line, that if you're going to measure, or your aim statement is going to contain a percent, then we should be measuring it by the percentage of families attending. But we're going to go with a count, and we've been counting the number of PAT families attending, and then we're going to hope to increase it.
And we know that lots of you reach out to us for support as you're thinking through the measures that you want to use for your improvement efforts. And so if anybody is willing to kind of share just like maybe your aim statement and what measure you're specifically looking at for your aim, I think that would be super helpful with this conversation. We actually just got a couple of things through the chat box. Genesee PAT says, I would like to maybe know tools to support tracking retention. So if anybody has any thoughts on tools that could be used to track family retention within your programs. And Lisa just chatted in and said that if required data is something we can get readily from your data system visit tracker, the time to collect might outweigh the value of the information. So that challenge of using a system for reporting data, but then having to figure out how to really get that data out of your system and use that data for program improvement as you are able to. Wexler Masaki says that they have a challenge in collecting different data for different funding streams and programs. So they're trying to find one source for collecting data for all. Thanks for sharing that. I think that that's actually a common challenge that many programs face in the home visiting world. Does anybody have something they're trying to measure right now that and maybe you're not really even sure how to measure it and are wondering if some of the other programs might have some good ideas? I think something else important to keep in mind when you're working with data is that a lot of times, depending on the area for improvement you're working with, and there are lots of different measures that you can consider. You heard Brenda share some information on process versus outcome measures or having some balancing measures that you could potentially be looking at. And there's normally not just one way to construct a measure. So, you know, what you want to think about is what it is that you're really trying to learn, and and then tailoring your measure to make sure that that aligns with what you are looking to learn, and also aligns with the period of time that you are working to work toward that goal. Because a lot of times too, measures can be set up in ways that, you know, if you have a short period of time that you're looking to make improvement, you know, thinking about a measure that's sensitive in the way of looking at something on a weekly or biweekly basis or even monthly basis can be really particularly helpful. And most times those lean more towards process measures. Outcome measures are typically longer term and a little harder to see that change in as frequently. But I think knowing that, you know, there's not normally one way to measure, there's actually multiple ways that you can consider, and finding that one that seems most in alignment with what it is you're hoping to learn is really important when you're embarking on your improvement and planning efforts.
The only two that I did not pull the lever for was either though. In fact, in protest, I wrote my.
There's some good conversation going on around some ideas about tracking retention and maybe doing that in a different way. And I also see some thoughts in the chat box about using satisfaction surveys, which, as Brenda shared, surveys are a great way to get data from your customers, both the internal customers, staff with your program, and external customers, clients, referral resources, community partners that you work with, so on and so forth. That data can be particularly valuable in understanding where to head with your improvement and planning efforts. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. Okay, we are going to go ahead and move forward with just the final part of our time together today. Some reminders for all of you, and then time for any final questions that you might have lingering that we haven't had time to touch on so far. In terms of reminders, I'm just going to give a couple quick reminders on the different, as I said this morning, buckets of work that are happening. So if you are a program that is engaged in a quality improvement learning collaborative, either the Access to Care, Family Retention and Engagement, or Early Language and Literacy, as a reminder, the requirements around that work are to participate in one of the collaboratives, and your participation includes completing at least 2 PDSA cycles, small cycles, submitting data via the REDCap data system online, and a team charter to the QI mailbox on a monthly basis. Those are due by the 15th of each month. And reviewing those monthly updates that we share back with you so that you can see what other teams are doing and collaborate across teams. Because I think one of the things you'll notice, even just from this first round of updates that we shared just this past month, there's a lot of similar work going on, and there's a lot of opportunity, and even as you saw today, to engage with one another and steal shamelessly, as I heard several times this morning. You'll see at the bottom of this slide the Michigan Home Visiting website for MDHHS, and this is just on here as a reminder that that is the place you currently want to go if you need to pull learning collaborative materials, because remember, our Michigan Home Visiting Initiative SharePoint site is now closed, so that is no longer a place to go to access those materials, but the materials have been moved over to the MDHHS Home Visiting website, and we are working on getting a new site up to support shared learning and engagement, and there will be more details to come on that in the future, but the information is there on that website. And when you go to the website, that takes you to the home page. On the left-hand side of the screen, there's a place to click for CQI resources. If you are a team that's engaged in quality planning efforts, you are working with MPHI, both myself and Cynthia Zager, to put together action plans to guide your work, and all of you have those at this point and are working on tweaking and kind of refining. You're participating in calls on a regular basis, and you're also going to participate in some scheduled on-site either meeting or meetings over the course of our time together. And if you are participating in LA-specific improvement efforts, so you are focused in on quality improvement efforts for your program specifically, just reminders around requirements for that piece include that you are completing at least 2 PDSA cycles within the fiscal year, that you are maintaining, completing, and sharing required documentation for each cycle, and as a reminder, that includes a team charter and storyboard, and that you're connecting with your MPHI QI advisor at least once per quarter. And this is a great time if you haven't connected with your MPHI QI advisor yet, if you haven't shared any materials for the efforts that you are currently engaged in, this is a good time to do that. And hopefully you were able to jot down too, if you weren't quite sure, couldn't remember who your advisor was, who that person is this morning during our time together with roll call. But of course, if you ever have any questions about that, don't hesitate to be in touch with me, and I can make sure that you get directed to the right person. And again, the Michigan home visiting website is on here. There are materials to support your work posted to that site too, things that you were used to getting from SharePoint, like team charter templates, storyboard templates, so on and so forth. Those are there for now, and we will let you know when the new home for all of that good information and resources is ready to go. Those are reminders around the different buckets of work that are going on. We had a couple of other additional reminders we wanted to share with you today. As a reminder, our next in-person time together is coming up on May 16th. We will be meeting at Horizons Conference Center in Saginaw, Michigan. We are in the process of getting the planning underway, and registration will open soon for that meeting, so be on the lookout. We will also be sharing storyboard and sharing templates with you sometime early in April, so that as your team gets ready for that meeting and starts putting together the things that you are going to share during the peer-to-peer sharing time that we have in person there, you have some templates to support that work. We have 2 community of learning calls that are scheduled out for the remainder of 2019. One will be happening on July 17th, and the one that follows will happen on October 16th. So if you don't have those on your calendar, go ahead and put those on your calendar and save that time for yourself and your team to join us in this virtual environment. And last but not least, a reminder about the Michigan Home Visiting Conference. That is happening August 6th through 8th. And that will be in Kalamazoo at the Radisson Plaza Hotel. And we just wanted to let you know to be on the lookout for a couple of QI sessions that will be happening there. We are going to do a couple of different sessions to support all of you as you move forward in your learning around quality improvement, and want to expand and sort of advance your learning in that way. At this point in time, I'm going to take pause and see if there are any final questions for the day. You can feel free to either unmute your mic or chat them through the chat box. I will say that I know one question that typically comes up is whether or not this recording and webinar information will be shared, and it will. We will send out the recording following the webinar so that you all have it, can share it with folks on your team who maybe weren't able to participate, and for the few teams that we had that weren't able to participate today, they'll be able to go back. And I just saw a question of will a copy of the PowerPoint be available as well, and it will indeed. You will get both in the email message that comes out following this meeting, so thanks for asking that. Other questions for the good of the group today? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close us out for today. Remember, get in contact with your MPHI QI advisor so that we can support you and help you in the work that you're engaged in. We are here and ready. We thank you all for your time today. Thanks so much for your engagement. Thanks, too, for your patience as we work through a couple of clunky issues with this software, and we will do some investigation to figure out why some of the phone lines weren't working today. We apologize for that. but we really appreciate your patience and your flexibility in using the chat box when you maybe weren't able to speak through your microphone. We hope you all have a wonderful day. We will look forward to being in touch soon, and thanks very much again for your time. Bye now.